Hi, my name is Nell and welcome to the Tiny Studio. This is Simply Nell's Tiny Studio, where in my studio we're going to be talking about many different things. Okay, not really. We're going to be talking about probably four different things in the Tiny Studio. We're going to be talking about my love for crochet or the fiber and textile arts. We're going to be talking about or we could be talking about my love and obsession for vintage Coach handbags. And we could also be, having, talking it up a little bit about dreadlocks. I am celebrating 20 years of being a dreadlock diva, a locknista queen. So when you come into the Tiny Studio, those are the videos that you will find here. But today, it's not a dreadlock video, and it's not a let's crochet and chat video either. This is a vintage Coach obsession video. So let me show you what arrived for me last week in the mail. This is a vintage Coach convertible bag or convertible clutch. This is what she looks like. Or I should say, this is the condition that she is in. Okay, let me open her up so you can see the inside. She has a front slip pocket. She has a slip pocket that spans the width of the bag. You see it in the back. There's her story patch or her creed. And I remove the straps from her, and they are in excellent condition. So the reason why I wanted to show you Sister Convertible Clutch here is because I am going to restore her and rehab her. I'm going to make that attempt to bring her back to her former glory. Yes, I am. I am going to rehab her. So as you see, there are a lot of things going on with her. And when I first saw her on the pre-love market, I was debating whether or not I was going to purchase her. The price was excellent. Excellent. I was able to make an offer on her based on the pictures that I saw. And the seller accepted my offer, and I was able to purchase her. I purchased this baby for $25. Now, let me give you some information. Oh, what this video is about, though, it's really about how to buy vintage Coach bags on the pre-love market. That's really what this video is all about. I wanted you to see that bag because she's going to be the example, or I'm going to use her as an example to show you how to look for vintage Coach bags on the pre-love market and how you can restore or refurbish. I don't really like that word refurbish. Just restore a Coach bag that's in rough shape back to its former self. And it's a process to do so, but it's a rewarding process at the end of the day. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because I have said in past videos that I have a limited budget when it comes to purchasing vintage Coach handbags. And as I said before, if you watch those videos, my budget ranged between the highest that I will go, that I will spend money for a vintage Coach bag may be $50. But I don't even like to get into the 50 area. No, I like to stay right around $40 to $45. That's it. That is my absolute limit. It has to be something really, really, really cool. And the condition has to be in a certain way for me to add the extra $5 to that price, because I have other things to do with my money. I mean, did you see all this yarn over here? Child, I have other things that I'm trying to do, so I can't spend a whole lot of money on a vintage Coach bag. And if you find that you have a limited budget, like I do when it comes to buying vintage bags, then you would appreciate the video, or you will appreciate my stance on buying Coach video, buying Coach bags at a certain price. But one of the things that I have discovered about buying on the pre-love market is that you do get what you pay for. So I spent $25 on this bag, but I kind of got what I paid for. Or did I? Or did I? You will find out. So I will be doing maybe a series of videos. I don't know how many yet, but I will be doing a series of videos off of this bag and using this bag as an example of how you too can go on the pre-love market and find something that you absolutely adore, and you, if necessary, you can go ahead and restore the bag yourself. I mean, if you're working with your budget, if your budget is a little bit higher than mine, there's somebody who's already done the work for you. And you can very well say, I don't want to restore a bag. I want to wear the bag immediately upon purchase. When it arrives in the mail, I want to take it out the bag and I want to wear it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Your budget has to be at a certain level for you to be able to participate in that type of excuse me, in that type of transaction. But for me, I already know that with the nuance of the Coach bag, vintage Coach bag market today, I understand that it's a little bit pricey. So if I want something, I'm going to have to keep my eye out for it, and I'm going to have to make sure that my skills of restoration are up to date so that I can restore the bags in my price range. And I have been pretty much successful, I must say, at this, because I've learned from various sources on how to restore these vintage Coach bags that come up on the market. So, as I said, this is a convertible Coach clutch bag, and the wonderful thing about her is that she is more than likely 40 plus years of age. I have her clocked around 1979, which will probably make her, what, I want to say 43 years old, somewhere in there. You do the math and let me know down in the comment section. So she's a pretty mature bag, but everything is there for me to restore and bring her back to her former glory, or as close to that as possible. So how was I able, or how am I able to go onto the pre-loved market and find vintage Coach bags to restore and place into my collection? It's a process, and it's a process that I have learned over time. And even, let me just put it to you like this: buying on the pre-loved market is risky. Very risky. And the reason is because there are dupes out here. Some of these Coach dupes are obvious dupes to a trained eye. Some of these dupes are really, really good. And that is especially to a trained eye. There are so many videos on YouTube from people who are just, who are like me, obsessed with Coach, restore Coach, and even they have been duped by some of these beautiful reproductions. So there are certain things that you have to look for, and there are certain nuances that are particular to Coach that you have to be aware of. But let's say you're on the market and you're on eBay or you're on Poshmark and you see this bag. It looks like Coach, and from the picture it's in rough condition, but you want it anyway. How do you know that this is an authentic Coach bag? How, or what are some telltale signs that will help you discern whether or not this is in fact a vintage Coach bag? Let's say you're at the thrift store. Let's say that you're online and you're looking and you see this bag. What do you do? All right. If you are at the thrift store and you come across this bag, how do you know that this is a vintage Coach bag? The obvious and most important thing that you can do is look at the leather. And even though this leather on this beautiful convertible clutch, even though this bag is worn, even though it's had maybe a really good life, there are still some ways that you can tell that this can be or could possibly be a vintage Coach bag. And it's by the leather. So if you are in a thrift store and you come across her, you're going to touch her. Vintage Coach leather has to be, in my opinion, one of the best leathers on the luxury designer handbag market. I haven't found a bag or touched a bag that feels quite like a vintage Coach bag. And I want to say from maybe the year of the 1960s all the way to probably 2000, vintage Coach leathers are just one of a kind. You're not going to find anything better than a vintage Coach leather. So when you're feeling her at the thrift store, you're going to touch her. And vintage Coach just has this feeling. It's strong. You know that it's had a previous life, and it could possibly have several more lifetimes as well because of the quality of the leather and the way that it feels and the way that it's made. That's the first thing that you look at in the thrift store. The next thing you're going to look at in the thrift store is you're going to look at the hardware. This is a typical vintage Coach lock, turn lock. And it has certain characteristics. The way that the turn lock is made itself. The way that it's shaped. The way that it's secured to the bag. I have seen restorers remove this hand lock piece, turn lock piece. You can remove this. You can remove it and clean it, or replace it if you have to. The inside of this turn lock, as you'll see, there it is. It's accessible. A lot of dupes, none of these, the turn lock, none of the turn locks are accessible because there's either some type of material over it, or there's some type of patch of leather or pleather on top of it or on the back of it, so it becomes unreachable. Coach doesn't do that. You can readily remove these, remove this turn lock and the case. You can remove that. So these are things that you have to know about when you're looking at a vintage, or what could possibly be a vintage Coach bag. Another thing to notice on a possible vintage Coach bag are the straps. Check the straps out. Look at the quality of the strap. Is it leather? What does the stitching look like? Is it clean? Is the stitching straight? Are there errors? You need to look for those things. Also on the strap for a vintage Coach bag, look at your clasps. Are they of high quality? And even though this bag is over 40 years old, possibly 42, 43 years of age, still look at the brass on it. How is the brass constructed? Notice all of those things. This is a 40-something-year-old bag, but the lobster claws work fine. They're strong and sturdy. They're not flimsy. They're not made of plastic or fake brass. And so all you will have to do to this is get some Brasso or some brass cleaner and clean it. And that it will be restored to its former brassy glory. You can look at the hang tag or the key fob. Is it made of 100% leather, or is it leather like the bag? Is the cartouche centered properly on the tag? When you're looking at vintage Coach bags, another good thing to look at is the spelling of Coach, because the A that is in Coach, the top of it is going to always be pointed and straight. A lot of dupes The A is flat. I've noticed that. But looking at your cartouche is very important. Looking at the spelling is very important. And basically, you can date your vintage Coach bag by looking at the fob or the hang tag. And this Coach hang tag says Coach, and then it says leatherware right underneath it. So that gave me a really good clue that this is a very, very vintage bag. But the construction overall should be in pretty good order. And when I talked about the stitching of the belt, I'm also referring to the stitching on the bag itself. Even though this is a 40-something-year-old bag, the stitching is still immaculate. It's still straight. There are no errors. Excellent stitching. A great telltale sign of whether or not this is a vintage Coach bag. Then let's go on the inside. Now, a lot of people will judge whether or not a vintage Coach bag is real by looking at the zipper. And usually there is a certain zipper that Coach uses, which is called the YKK or something of that iteration. However, what I've learned is that dupes also, good dupes, also use the same zipper. So you can't really use the zipper manufacturer as a way to discern whether or not this is a vintage Coach. What you also need to do, besides the things that I already talked about, another thing that you will have to do is you will have to look on the slip pocket where you see what many call the story patch, or what is also called the creed. And it's that little square patch, that little square box that's in the center of the back slip pocket, and it contains some information. Now, I'm going to read to you what it says, and this is very important that you notice this. Since this is a vintage bag, this is the pre-creed bag. This is probably a 1979, 78 or 79 bag. This is what she says. I'm going to attempt to read it for you. It says this is a Coach bag. It is made out of a completely natural glove tanned cowhide. The scars, scratches, veins, and wrinkles are natural markings characteristic of full grain leather. Then it says made in New York City, USA. And right underneath that is a number. And that number is number 3802544. So when I looked at the creed or the story patch, I'm also looking once again at the cartouche that's there. I'm looking at the patch and I'm reading it, and I'm looking for spelling. I want to make sure that the spelling is correct, because on a lot of dupes, the spelling is not correct. The whole paragraph can be off-centered, and sometimes you can't read it because it's squeezed together like this. You know, I've seen bags where the story patch just looks really, really wonky. It's just not right. And that is a telltale sign that you're fooling with a dupe. Now, on the off chance that you have in your possession a really good fake, then the telltale sign that you may have a fake is featured in the cartouche and the way the cartouche is constructed, and looking at that letter A is a really great indicator. But another good indicator as well will also be the serial number. This is a pre-creed bag, which means, as I said, this is a bag that was made, of course, before 1994. And 1994 is the starting period where the serial numbers in the bag begin to be registered. Or I shouldn't say that. That's when the serial numbers really begin to have a purpose, will be after 1994. So this creed that I read to you, the number, the style number, or the registration number, what the person would do who purchased this bag back in 1978 or 79, they had the option of filling out a card that came with the bag. You will put the serial number on that card and you would mail it back to Coach. So if anything was to happen to your bag, let's say you needed some help with your zipper, or you needed you lost your belt or whatever, they will have the bag, your bag, on file and with your name, and you would be able to go ahead and talk to a representative and get those things handled. I don't know if Coach does that anymore, but that is what that serial number, that's what it was for. So in this instance, I'm looking at the bag and I know already this is pre-1994. So I know that this bag right here, the serial number, doesn't really mean anything to me, but I can tell just by looking at it that this serial number is a vintage Coach serial number, and it is probably from 1978 or 1979. And that's just from looking at it at the thrift store. So using my sight, using my senses of sight and touch and discernment on the hardware, the hardware and the different other things that's going on in person, I would be able to discern that this is indeed an authentic Coach bag. But what if I was online? What if I was online? How would I be able to figure out that this is indeed an authentic Coach bag? Well, stay tuned to my next video where I will show you how to look for, or how to find authentic Coach bags on the pre-loved market online. So thank you so much for hanging out with me in the tiny studio, and look at my new baby. I'm going to be working on her this week, and I will show you the finished results of my restoration efforts in another week and a half. But you have to hang out with me in the tiny studio to find out, to get the after pics of what she looks like. So thank you so much for hanging out with me in the tiny studio. I hope this video was of benefit to you. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please drop down in the comments section and leave me a question, and maybe I can help you out. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Do not forget to press that like button, and if you haven't already subscribed to Simply Nails Tiny Studio, please, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.